and welcome to ATO Unfiltered Crossroads edition. We have Gio here with me, and today we picked a topic that I know can be challenging or different and engaging and joyful and tearful and all the things for everybody. We picked the topic of relationships, and we're going to see where this goes because obviously there's a huge age difference and a huge relationship experience difference, but that's why we're here, because we're on the crossroads and you have a different perspective than I do. It's different times, so let's dive in. So before we started the episode, we're talking about how we show up for different relationships, and we're not talking just about romantic relationships. We're talking about all relationships, basically how we show up for people you were talking about, and I love that. So tell me what your thoughts are, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think, like, in general, I think what's really interesting about how we show up for people is that I think it comes down to, like, our identity and who we view as ourselves, right? Because we have a sense of self of who we are.
Right.
And every single person you meet in your life is going to have their own version of who you are. And I think that when we're with specific people or with certain people, whether it's friends or partners or whatever, they will, the version of themselves that they see of us will sometimes be what they pull out of us, whether or not it's conscious. They will be, oh, well, I know that you're super caring, so I'll rely on you to do this. And it's like, okay, well, I am, because I'm a caring person, not because this is what I enjoy doing all the time. And so I think people pull those out of you and how you show up.
And it's different how we show up, for example, for people at work, like you and I, we work together. It's different how you show up for a group of friends, if you go to a cafe, if you go to a bar, if you go, like you said, romantic relationships. It depends on the relationship that you think you're going to have with that person. That it depends on how you show up for people. And we play different versions of ourselves too. Sometimes, and I'm Hispanic too. You have a different background other than just American, like I do. So it's also, like, culturally, like, for me, so interesting how I change personalities if I'm with a group of people that speak English or if I'm with a group of people that speak Spanish, because I feel a different type of connection. Do you experience that too?
That's a big thing. I think it's like, specifically with my family, like, nobody speaks Arabic, French, English the way that we do, except for in our house, because it's like our family's language. Like, that's how we developed it. And so even somebody else who speaks the same language is like, we speak it a different way because it's our own house.
Right.
And so there is this sense of, like, letting your guard down, being with these people that you can speak that language with. And, like, I noticed it this summer when my aunts and, like, cousins came and visited, and I was like, oh, I'm in a much different, like, space when we're in public because I'm operating and speaking in the same way that I am at home. And that was something that came up, like, in my last relationship, was I was like, if this person is ever going to be able to speak Arabic or French or whatever, am I ever going to feel like I'm at home?
I know.
And that was a weird thing, was I was like, I can only speak English. And that was something that I was aware of, and I would talk to my friends about and be like, is this normal? Like, and they were like, you need to, like, it's probably a common thing. Like, they were saying, like, you probably need to talk to people that speak other languages. But it makes sense, is like, you're able to shift into a different kind of relaxed state, or like a comfortable home state in your identity and who you are, and specifically with the language thing.
And I think, obviously language, and you want to speak the language of your heart, you know. And I grew up speaking Spanish. Now English, I've spoken more English, like more years English than Spanish, so I'm literally bicultural and bilingual too. But like you said, it's just you show up differently in the connection that you make. Like, my sister has been married with this guy for, I don't know, 15 years, something like that. And he speaks Farsi and English. And my sister speaks English and Spanish. So their common language is English. And I've always wondered, because I was married to a guy for 20-some years, and he also speaks English and Spanish like I did. So we had a language, but my sister and my brother-in-law speak only English to each other. And for me, it's so puzzling, because it's strange to see my sister speaking only one language at a time, because her and I would speak English and Spanish back and forth. So I always wonder, like, the connection that you feel to people is different when they speak the language of your heart. You know, even though we speak English too, and we feel very comfortable speaking English, but it's a different level of connection. So I always wonder, like, now that I'm single again, and I'm not thinking into the dating world or anything like that, but I'm like, how is that even going to work with somebody that doesn't speak the same languages that I do? Because I'm so comfortable with those.
Yeah.
And I show up differently. Obviously, for my job, I speak a lot more English than I do at home. But, you know, so you kind of make the switch in your brain. But also, I wonder if we also make the switch emotionally, like whenever we show up with people and how they perceive us. Like a person might see you as a caring person, but, and not that I haven't seen that on you, but I have, because we're in a professional setting, maybe I haven't had the need to see that on you. So I will never describe you as a caring person. You know you are, but you know, it's just an example.
No, I know what you mean.
Because
Like at work, you show up and you carry yourself in a very different way versus when you're in a romantic relationship versus with your parents versus with friendship. And I think that's another thing is with your parents, like typically you're speaking your home language with your parents. And so it's like, if I have a partner that can't speak that language or can't speak whatever, that also becomes a little bit of a barrier, it's also a barrier that I felt bad about. Because I'm like, it's not my fault. Like, I mean, it's not your fault. Like, so it was one of those things where I'm like, how am I showing up in this? And am I letting this put, not necessarily like a wedge in between us, but am I letting this become something that I feel bitter about? Which it was something where I was like, you don't speak it. Like, you can't, it just doesn't click. Like, if I'm on the phone with my mom and you don't understand what I'm saying, I don't want to have to re-explain the conversation. And it was like little things like that.
Yeah.
And so, I think like showing up at work, we show up in a very different mindset and just throughout the life.
But I love what you said about different people bring different aspects of you. And for me, like, I'm 47, and obviously I've experienced a lot of relationships. I was married for 20 some years to the same person, but relationships and I was going to speak Spanish now. And in a matter of like friendships and things like that, and changing friendships. But like, it's so interesting to me, like, how do I stay authentic to myself? Because I have my group of friends that are in English, and I have my group of friends I speak Spanish with, and I have my group of friends that are like my kids, you know, sports moms and things like that. And so how you show up and how you keep evolving and showing up different aspects of yourself, but knowing also how to stay authentic to yourself. Yeah. And that's always something that it's very intriguing to me. You know, how do I know different people bring out different aspects of me, but also, how do I not let myself be influenced by the attitudes of others in myself? Like I've always said, it doesn't matter what people do to me. And, you know, I'm heartbroken. I have relationships, I have betrayals and lying and this and that and all the things. And how do I still trust people? How do I still be living love? And that's a choice that we have to make every day, and not let those past experiences influence who you are, because I know I'm a person that's full of love and enthusiasm and positivity and things like that. And whenever you face relationships like that break your heart, or, you know, betray you and break your trust and things like that, you start to feel different. And so for me, that's been a main thing in the last like 15 years. Like, how do I keep that away from who I truly am? Yeah. And how I really show up day in and day out for my job, for my coworkers, and, you know, for my children and things like that. So that's always something. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I don't know if that make myself clear about what I'm trying to say, because I know it's a different concept.
No, I know what you mean.
Okay,
I think there's a Taylor Swift song. There's always a Taylor Swift song. Yes, it's Mirrorball. Do you know that one?
No.
Okay, so it's on Folklore, and it was written during COVID, like, because of just what she thought people were expecting from her. Yeah. But the concept of the song is about, like, the lyrics are, I'm a mirror ball, I'll show you whatever version of me tonight. As in, like, I'm a disco ball, I'm shiny, I have 1,000 different shiny pieces. Yes. But it looks different depending on who's looking at it or where you're looking at it. Oh. Like, the angle, like, that's the metaphor she's talking. I'm like, that's brilliant, because
that is so...
It's playing with this idea of, like, you can be this shiny thing that is different to 1,000 people, but is it who you are? Like, if you're showing people sides of you versus who you are. So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes, like, absolutely.
Really being conscious about, like, who am I? How am I showing up in this space? And I think that comes down to being present with the moment and who you are. Yeah. But I also think a big part of it is learning that nobody and not everybody is going to keep up with the version of yourself that you are today. Mm-hmm. And like, if I meet or run into a friend from a year ago or 2 years ago, like, obviously we're going to be able to talk to each other,
Right.
but they don't know the version of me that I am now,
Yes.
or someone from high school even.
Place,
And
yes.
so it's like, it's hard to really think of like, how can I keep all of these people that meant so much to me in my life or talk to them or whatever. But I think you're also never going to be able to truly move forward and grow if you have people that only know a certain version of you,
Yeah.
or only see you a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to be not selective, but I think understanding that the person you are when you go home doesn't have to be who you show up as everywhere.
Right.
As long as you know who that person is,
Yes.
and you're embodying what that person means. Obviously, not like you're this amazing person at home and then you go out and you're like this
Yeah.
horrible, like mean person.
Yes.
Like, obviously, there's like
Oh,
limits
that
to
they
that.
said very much.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
you use,
keep it.
you use logic to figure out what
Yes.
that means. But I think that's a big part of it, is really
Yeah.
having that confidence of knowing, like, underneath the disco ball, underneath the mirror ball, so who's inside.
Wow.
And so that's why I love that metaphor. I was like, this
Yes.
one is a very relevant
That
metaphor.
is so, and that's why I love doing episodes with him, because we have different experiences, obviously different times, and you can relate in a different way. Something, and I've had these thoughts for a long time. I haven't opened up to people because I'm like, is that a real thing? But it's funny that you mentioned the disco ball in this song, because I just read yesterday or the day before yesterday, I read like a meme on Facebook or Instagram, one of those, that said about how we shine even though we're a disco ball. And a disco ball is a 1,000 broken pieces of glass, a mirror, so, but it's broken. And how if you put it back together, it can still shine out, joy and things like that. So I love now that something, the universe is trying to tell me something with disco balls, and that fact that we mirror whoever is in front of us, but also don't forget the authenticity and genuinity of who you are.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's not
That's
gonna
the song,
go but think.
But it's a really good, I think the disco ball is a great metaphor for that.
Yes.
Because like you said, like there's so many layers to it. Like there's the broken glass, and there's the fact that it still shines even if you put it together.
Yes.
You can even talk about like the cracks are still there, as in like sometimes we still have the trauma or the whatever, but
Right.
we learn how to cope with it, live with it, move on from it versus, I think
Yeah.
the disco ball is a great metaphor.
Yes, I love that. And now you're talking about something different, about how you cope with trauma and things like that. And me being a therapist, one of the things that I always ask, that I always kind of reflect back with my clients is like, okay, so you have this relationship that is not serving you. You have this situation. You've had this trauma. You had, things that happen to you, and whatever it is. Now what? Like I always ask that question, because, and not in like it doesn't matter, but in a way of how can we use this to empower you? And that's my whole outlook on mental health. It's like, okay, so you've had all this stuff happen to you. Now what? Like, what are you choosing to deal with it, and how are you choosing to show up for yourself?
Yeah.
Like we all have baggage. We all have experiences. We all have embarrassing experiences. We all have, different things, like dynamics of your family. Like for me, it's so intriguing, but I can see where at some point in your life, it could have been like something like people would look at your families like, what? You speak 3 languages in the same house? And, people could see you a little bit different, or, I could see you elementary school, like kids maybe making fun of, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
really
that was
don't
part
know.
of that experience, was
Yeah.
really having to learn what it meant to be confident in who I was and everything, because that was the big thing, is like growing up in, post 9/11 world, and like a lot of people would see people speaking Arabic and be scared or make comments, and as a kid, like it was a lot of, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know, what?
Yeah, we
And
the
so-
people.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what? And so,
Yes.
like,
I didn't
for
think
me,
of
I think
that.
the
Yes.
confusion
Yeah.
was part of why I was fine, because it was like, I was so like, this is not correct, that for me, I never gave it power.
Yes.
And that was a big thing. I was like,
Oh, I love that.
well, that's
I love that.
that's I've never
Yes.
worded it that way, but I think that's really what it was. It's like
Yeah.
I would hear these things, and I knew that was not the reality, so it never really, like, I'd be like, you're stupid, but it
Yeah.
would never bother me in the sense that I was like, go home and be upset. I mean, can you believe they're saying this? Because
Yeah.
I really would not give it that kind of power.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to what you were saying about like the now what thing. Is like, even with that, like I can come here and I can tell you like all of these things that I never processed it and it actually hurts or whatever. The now what, I think, really speaks to knowing who you are, because if you are somebody, and like I'm gonna use my best friend, and she's a Cancer, and she is like, I'm so emotional, I need time to process things, And I'm like, listen, if you know that that's who you are and you go through something and that's what you need to do, but you're choosing that and you're aware of that, go for it. I'm never going to judge you for locking yourself in the house and crying for a week if you made that decision and you know this is what I need to do because I will be fine.
Yes.
And it's like, for me, I don't work that way. For me, I literally will set a timer on like, not like a physical timer, but like a mental timer of like, I'm not going to let this bother me for more than a day.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's my way of coping with it. It's like, the now what is like, okay, do I need to feel this or do I just need to keep pushing?
Yes.
But I think that comes back to having a strong sense of self and knowing who you are, because it's very easy to not feel like you're in control.
Yes.
No matter who you are, that happens. You will feel that in life. You're not in control. That's part of it.
Yes, we're not. Yeah.
And then, but you're in control of how you respond.
Yes,
that's
there
what
you
I wanted to say. It's like, you're not in control of the situation,
yes,
but you're in control of like the now what, where are we going? So like, I've never thought of that as being a harsh kind of like, oh, now what? Like dismissive thing.
Yes.
I really see it as like, no, now what?
Yeah.
Do you
What
was
do you
talking about it enough? Are you good? Can you go walk away? Or do you need to sit here? Do you need to process it? Like, do we need to break it down?
Yes.
So I think that's what's important. It's that choice.
I love the part that you said. I didn't give it power. And because that's what we choose to do. We can choose what we give power to. Like you were saying, it's like, we're not in control. We're not in control of anything and anybody. And as a mental health professional myself, I can tell you depression and anxiety and a lot of the mental health issues come from our lack of feeling like we have power, because we want, as human beings, we crave to have power over something or somebody. So that's a lot, especially anxiety. That's where a lot of it comes from. Just wanting to control a person, a situation, the future, whatever. So, but the thing is that you have to live in the moment. And then the power that you have is choosing what you're going to pay attention to. How do I react to the situation? How do I react to this person? How do I, and what can I do about it? That's where you have the power, not on the outcome of the situation, but on what you can do and how you choose to feel. For me, that was so foreign. I was a mental health professional already when I learned that we have the power to control what we think and what we feel. I was like, what? That was so foreign to me. But it's so true at the same time. It's like, and I was reading a book, I listened to a book not so long ago, and it was talking about how the moment that you feel anxiety, pray about it or meditate about it. Don't give it power.
Yeah.
Don't let it linger. And just pray about it at that moment. Meditate, whatever, talk to God, talk to the universe, or whoever you feel comfortable with, whatever religious or spirituality you practice, and then let it go. And then choose that you're going to feel better at that moment. You know what, God? I don't have power over this. I'm going to put it in your hands. I'm going to choose joy. Okay, when have I felt joy before? How did that feel like? And then invite it in, invite the emotion in.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful because we can choose. That's what we can choose. Yeah. We cannot choose what the other person does. If they fire us from our job, if, bills and stress and relationships and what our kid does or doesn't do, things like that. But that's what we have power.
Yeah.
And those choices. So these kids come with so much knowledge nowadays. And he's not a kid. He's a grown man, but he's a kid to me.
Basically still a kid.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to go back to what you said about like it being a foreign concept of like controlling your thoughts, basically. And I think that's part of the world that we live in. Yes. I think part of that is that no matter who you are, whether or not you start this way, the world tends to make you do this, which is it tends to make you live in a reactionary state.
Yes.
And that is part of what makes it so hard to feel like we're in control, is if we're constantly having to react, oh my gosh, I have to get gas. Oh my gosh, I have to do this. Oh my gosh. And you're living in that reactionary state. It becomes very easy to ignore what you're feeling and what you're going through and just kind of accept everything as, well, I have control over this. I just need to whatever. Yeah. And so I think it's something that even if you're aware of it, life has a tendency to make that come back up. And you have to remind myself, I'm in control, breathe.
Yes.
Like I am the one that is doing what I need to do. And then same thing with anxiety. I used to have horrible anxiety, like to the point where I would be like in college, there were points where like I literally like would leave the classroom and like have to call my mom and be like, it's happening again. And so it was really bad. And what happened was, the last time it ever happened was I was walking my dog, and a lot of it revolved around my mom being a teacher and my sister just being in schools and just like, things happening. And so I was really like, it was one of those things where I was walking my dog and then I just kind of froze because I was like, oh my gosh, what if they're not okay? What if something's happening? And it was one of those things where I didn't know what to do because I was literally in the middle of the street holding my dog and I'm like, like literally like
You had no power to move or anything. Yeah, you felt powerless. Yes.
All I could do was call my mom and I was just like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, I don't know. And then that was when I was like, okay, I can't be doing this. Like, what's going on? And so it took a lot of just like, when I started to have the early, like starting to recognize the early indicators that I was about to freak out.
Yes.
And then figuring out like, thinking about this is not going to change the outcome. Thinking about this, worrying about this. If something happens, it happens, and then you'll deal with that.
Right.
Don't freak out now. And that process of kind of almost giving into it and being like, what's the point of thinking about it? Like, it's not going to change. That is what helped me get over it. Yeah. Ever since then, I have not had a problem with it because it really was this like just switch of like, I have control over like walking down that road. And it was a subconscious, unconscious thing where I let myself go down. And I let myself get into the panic attack or anxiety attack. And it was something that I was able to fix by just really thinking, why am I thinking like this? What's that going to actually do? Yes. What do I have control over? Okay, let me focus on what I have control over. Right. I can text my mom and see what's going on if I'm that worried. Yeah. I can go and I've been reading a lot recently. This wasn't what helped back then, but that creativity is like the antithesis to anxiety. And it's like as simple as like just starting to cook or just doing something that like causes you to think in a different way, literally shuts down your anxiety. Yes. That's something that I've read about newer, but I'm like, this makes so much sense. Like that's part of it is like just applying yourself in any sort of creative way literally will reduce that anxiety. Yeah. I think that's part of controlling what we can do in our lives. Yeah.
So for that example that you gave, like just you panicking and having that anxiety attack because you were thinking about your mom and your sister, being okay. So let's break that situation down to where like you wanted to control that your mom and your sister were okay. Yeah. You had that need. Being a male, I don't know what it is, whatever it was, you wanted to control the situation that they were okay, which meant that you were not trusting God or the universe to take care of that. Right. So it's that giving in and say, like when you say that the first sign of it is like, no, have no control of it. And then at that moment, like I said, either pray or meditate or whatever, it's like, or surrender and say, world, you are in charge of this. I am not in charge of them.
That's exactly what it was.
I can't protect them. Yes, I can't protect them.
And for me, because I'm a very like science research kind of person, I literally had to go read statistics and be like, okay, that's like the chances that something could happen is not unlikely. The chances that it's gonna be at this specific location, at that point, that's beyond me. Like that's what I really had to like come to terms with. And for me, it was looking at the numbers. Like I literally had to look at statistics and be like to calm myself down. And that is why like doing that research helped a lot. That's all I was like, okay.
Yes, and it's playing with that scenario, right? Like I remember having major anxiety many years ago. We're in a cruise. It was my first time. No, it wasn't my first time on a cruise. I used to go when I was little, but like just thinking about the ship sinking. Like I could not shake that off my head. Not that I could not. I could. I was choosing not to. Yeah. And I kept picturing and I kept looking out the window and I kept picturing and I kept looking out and it was just a major thing for me not being able to move. But you can, like you said, engage in another activity, read another book, pray, meditate, do something different to break that cycle and to break the mentality. And now every time a thought comes into my head about whatever, a toxic relationship that I've had in the past or a situation that I felt ashamed or something stupid that I made that I still carry guilt, I still carry shame around it. It's like, okay, meditate, let it go. It's over. Like getting in contact with this person is not the right decision. Doing this is not going down the road is not the right decision. Just pray, meditate, and let it go. And then just kind of go on with your life. But and then, like I said, it's inviting a positive emotion into you. Emotions are just reaction. I was reading about emotions the other day. I read a lot, and it's like an emotion. Like we think of emotion, for example, anger, right? So an emotion is a reaction. It's a physical reaction. It's a chemical imbalance in your body. Like it's like a match that you turn on. The emotion in your body lives for only about 10 to 15 seconds. What you do with that and how the thoughts that come through your head is what makes the emotion worse. Because the emotion, like I said, it only lives in your body, physical body, for 15 seconds. But for example, if it's anger, if it's somebody making you mad, boom, the emotion, the match lights on, it's 15 seconds. But if you keep thinking about how this person is so dumb, or this person is doing this on purpose, and this person is doing this and that, and they did this before, and you carry that thought into those negative cycles and patterns, that's where the emotion gets out of proportion.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, like all these things. And that goes for any emotion, for anxiety. Like I said, the anxiety, maybe it's 10, 15 seconds. And if you let your mind carry on about like, oh, what's happening to my mom and my sister, or they're in the school and there's a shooter, or whatever the thought of you was, you know, that's what makes the emotion live longer, because you're giving it power. And we're going back to that statement that you made, which I absolutely love, because it relates to everything that we're talking about. So I think this can be 3 different episodes.
I mean, it was kind of a natural
progression, but it's so interesting though.
But they're all intertwined things.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the cruise ship really quickly. That's a really good example that I've had to start talking to my parents about, and other people that have really bad anxiety. I've noticed is with the cruise ship. Okay, it's gonna sink. What can you do? Nothing. You can get on the lifeboat. You can do whatever. So part of what's helped me also is the cruise ship. I love ships. I don't have that issue, but I know that if I were to be on a cruise ship and that were to come up for me, what would help me is okay, well, where are the lifeboats?
Right.
How do I get there? What do I do? Awesome, great. I'm prepared. Now I can enjoy my time until that worst case scenario happens.
Yeah.
And that was something that even when I started subbing at the school, it came back a little, not in any of the same way, but a little bit where I would walk in and I'm like, okay, what if something happens? And then I'm like, okay, if something happens, we'll get to it when we get to it. That's literally how I've had to do it. But it's at the same time, let me be prepared. Let me be, and that's been a big thing is just mentally preparing for the worst case scenario without having anxiety about it.
Yeah.
Has helped reduce my anxiety a lot. And then the thing about emotions are a match. I think that's something that I figured out subconsciously in college, because whenever I failed out and was not doing well and was depressed, I was listening to a lot of sad music, and I realized I was okay, if I'm a little bit sad, if I'm a little bit sad, and I go listen to, it was Billie Eilish mostly.
Oh yeah,
Billie Eilish's first album. If I'm a little bit sad, or I'm oh, I kind of had a bad day, and I get in the car and that's what I put on, of course I was depressed. Of course, that's what I realized. I literally let myself, even if I was only sad for those 5 seconds, like you said, the second that I'm okay, we'll just listen to Oh my gosh. And so now it's at the point where I still like sad music and I'll listen to it from time to time, but not when I'm sad. Yes. I don't listen to it when I'm sad, because it only makes it lets me sit in that.
Yes.
And that makes a lot of sense based off of the anger thing that you were saying.
Yes.
It's everything. Even happiness. When you're happy, keep living in that. Try and make that, and so
choose it.
Don't shut down your happiness. I think a lot of people do that too. It's the second they feel any sort of happiness, if it goes against what they feel.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the difference between that. And there's something that you said that I want to go back to, but there's a difference between living in fear and living in love. There's only 2 ways of living life. The primitive emotions are fear and love.
Yeah.
So when you live by fear, you live by, okay, something wrong's going to happen, and then you let it take over. You let that thought, that emotion kind of roll over into bigger things. And but living in love is if something happens, there's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C, everything's fine, and just you kind of surrender to, like I say, universe or God or whatever. But it's living in, you cannot live in fear and not go to cruises anymore, because you're oh, what if I sink? It's no, I've been to different cruises after that. And I was okay, I gotta prepare myself and breathing and stuff like that. But going back to the thing about Billie Eilish and, being sad and stuff like that, and we're different. So you might feel sad and you're no, I'm not gonna put that kind of music. For me, Cancer, it's okay, I'm sad, let me put Billie Eilish, let me cry my eyes out for 3 days or 3 hours or whatever that is. And then I'm because I need to kind of feel it, because I have a lot of emotional depth, and so I need to feel it really bad. And then once it's out of my system and I cry it out, it's okay, I'm good to go. Now let's put Taylor Swift again, or if it's a breakup, it's Olivia Rodrigo or whatever.
Yeah.
Things like that. But I think it's different, and your way is okay, and my way is okay. It's just, we have to find out what it is. So, for example, if we're here at work and you see me sad and you want me to snap out of it because that's what works for you, and put like Shake It Off from Taylor Swift. And I'm gonna be like, dude, like I need my moment. Like I need to feel this, so that can be a type of relationship that can be a thing that it can explode with a relationship just because you're different and you
That
need
makes
to have
sense.
different
And
things.
that was something that showed up in my last relationship, was a lot of like, I like to talk about problems when they happen. I like to, feeling the emotions is important. This sound like a cold-hearted Capricorn. Feeling the emotions is important. Do not
For 3 seconds.
But it's more important, in my opinion,
Yes.
to have a conversation about what you were feeling or what the issue was, because whenever we go straight into, like with my last relationship, was very like, anytime there was an argument or anytime there was an issue, it was, okay, well, you need to run off and hide. And I'm like, no, let's talk. Let's figure out what the problem was. And it's like, they just wanted to feel their emotions, whatever. I'm like, that's great. Go cry, I guess. Like, that's how it felt for me. But I'm like, I'm not going to be able to like rest and be okay until we talk about this.
Yes.
And if that takes you an hour to feel through, okay, but just be prepared for me to not be okay for an hour.
Right.
And I think that was part of that, was I was like, it is putting strain on us. Like that was something I had to say constantly during that relationship, was like, and it was my first like it was 2 years, but it was my first like real deep relationship. Like we were living together by the end of it. Like it was.
Oh, okay. So it was
and
serious,
so and so the thing is like that's why a lot of like that stuff where it's like we were living in the same house. Like I wasn't just like, okay, I'll see you in an hour. Like it was literally like,
you're right there. Yes.
And so something I had to constantly say is like, there's two of us here. If you are angry or upset or sad, it affects me. If you are whatever, it affects me. Talk to me about how you're feeling.
Yes.
Because, and he was a Scorpio, and so it was like same thing. Water sign, emotional, yes. And so it was the same thing where it was like, I know that you need to feel this. Can we feel it through the conversation?
Yes.
And that's my thing. Even with my parents, like if we get in an argument, they're like, Jill, we don't need to talk about everything. I'm like, yes, we do. For me, it's important. I need to talk about it, whether it's just dissecting what happened or just like explaining what our positions were, because for me, it's important to not be angry at each other. And then I think like this happens a lot between parents and children, is like you yell at each other and then you just don't talk, and then 3 hours later, what's wrong? What?
Like nothing happened.
And so for me, it's very important now that I'm older to have those conversations. Like my parents don't want to have most of the time. It's important for me. Because whether I'm in the wrong or if they're in the wrong, I still want to have that because I think it's important. Which I know it can be annoying and like redundant sometimes, because I'm like, I am the person that wants to not keep bringing stuff up, but it's like,
until it's resolved.
I think that's where a lot of people get. I'm like, if there's a pattern, I'm gonna keep saying it.
Right.
I'm not making stuff up.
Yeah. No, and for me, for example, I will, and this is something like if I get upset or if you maybe hurt me or in any way, I'm a Cancer, I'm out, my crap. So I will kind of hide and tell you to go away, but I really want you to give me a hug. Because I'm a Cancer, but also my love language is touch. So it's kind of confusing.
Well, that's how my best friend is. She's a Cancer, but it's very like, come check on me.
Yes, come give me a hug. We don't have to talk right now. Let me just feel. But and then can the conversation, because I like I said, I have to go, but I go real deep, and sometimes that's people like they just don't get why or how come, or it's like you're still bringing that stuff up. But like you said, if it's something that keeps bothering me, like I have to bring it up. But I have to be in a good state, like in a relaxed state, for me to have that conversation. Because if I'm still emotional, I'm just gonna cry through the whole thing, and you're probably not gonna understand what I'm saying. Anyway,
and I think that's where like that's also on me to like give people grace, because I'm like, I want to have the conversation in the moment, whether or not for me, it's more important to have the conversation when you're feeling the emotions. But I can also see how it's similar to like grocery shopping when you're hungry. Like, you might overdo it if you're in those emotions when you're trying to have the conversation. So I think I see both sides of it. But I think there is, for me personally, like I do like to have the conversations in the moment, just because I feel like it's important.
I always, when I used to counsel couples, because I did a couple of years as a couples counselor in that church, I used to tell them, like, talk about what is it that you need when you're feeling certain emotion, when you're in a good space. Like, don't talk about what you need when you're upset, because that's not going to bring the real you. Because you're going to say one thing, it's going to be another, because emotions are like, on the edge and things like that. So talk about, like, what is it that when you get upset, Gio, like, tell me what is it that you want from me when we are in a good, in a good stable relationship. Like, I would tell the couples, like, go out on a date, like a good day, have a, and talk about, when I'm upset, this is what I need from you. When I am anxious or overwhelmed, overworked or whatever, this is what I need from you. This is how you can help me. And, things like this, so you can take care of me, but talk about it not when the emotion is there.
Yeah.
And then for the other person, the responsibility is kind of like following through with what the other person said. But we have to know ourselves very well. Like behind all the mirror ball, we have to know deep down what is it that we really need and be able to communicate it.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of people fail.
A lot of
Yes,
problems happen
yes.
is people not knowing what they want.
Yes.
Like I can't
And being
help
too
you
broad.
find that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a big part of it. And you mentioned like the being angry thing. And that was something that at the beginning of that relationship was like, we had a conversation where I was like, listen, we're going to get in a fight. We're going to get in arguments. Like that's normal. What I do want us to promise is that we're never going to say anything just because we're angry. And that was something that like, it only happened a few times where it's like we were angry and like something would be said where it's like, you just said that because like you're just angry and you're just trying to be mean. The second that would happen, I would shut down the conversation, whether it came from me or from him. Like it was like, we're shutting down the conversation. Like I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in a space to have it. So like there was a limit.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, no matter what I was going to talk.
Yeah.
It was more like, if something was said where it's like, that was done.
Yeah.
We separate.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
And that's one of my defaults, that when I am upset, and you can see that from cancers, like when we're upset, our mouth just can be very vicious, you know? And so that's why I want to clamp out first and kind of hide, to kind of breathe and kind of, so I don't say anything that I will regret later.
Yeah.
And so that's I've learned that the hard way. I'm a licensed professional and I've been doing it for 15 years and I'm still struggling sometimes, with how to communicate when those emotions come up. But I feel like lately I have been a little bit better about when you feel the emotion, the match lit up. It's like, okay, wait, this is only for 15 seconds. Let's calm down and then just kind of think it through. Sometimes there's some people that just like,
It's like a match and then like
They
seven
give
more.
you-
Like,
they're like gas to the match,
It's like an
and it's
actual
like,
stove. Like it's not.
yes. So it's certain people, not that many, but so anyway, but you learn from everything. We're gonna go ahead and start wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy this talk. It was really exciting and really mind opening. Eye opening. That's the phrase, right?
Yeah.
Eye opening. To learn from such a young person. But so wise. But any last thoughts that you want to add to it?
Yeah, just like as a disco ball, as a mirror ball, like there's so many different versions of ourselves, and we have to know who we are on the inside. And it's also about like we're disco balls. They're
Yes.
Because people want to dance under them. Like you want to be something that people want to be drawn to.
Right.
Like, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Don't be someone that people want to be drawn to if it's not authentic.
Right.
That's a big thing.
I love
That's
that.
a big thing. Yeah, and not giving things power.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't say more. I'm just going to close it right there. Thank you guys for watching us, and we hope to see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoy.